I was down on my knees on the freezing hardwood floor, gripping my grandfather's ice-cold hand when his eyelids barely lifted and he whispered something that changed everything. They don't know about. Help me get revenge. For a second, I wasn't a Marine anymore. I was just a granddaughter staring at a man who had been left behind like he didn't matter. His breath came out in faint white clouds in the bitter air. The house felt like a freezer, and that stupid note, was still sitting on the counter like some kind of sick joke. That was where the truth really started for me, but everything leading up to it began a few hours earlier. I got home for Christmas just after sunset, my boots crunching over the driveway, duffel bag slung across my shoulder. I was still wearing my Marine winter uniform, collar tight, ribbons straight, boots polished enough to reflect light. That uniform had been through storms, deployments, and moments where I wasn't sure I'd live to see another holiday, but nothing prepared me for what was waiting inside that house. The first thing that hit me was the cold, not just a chill, but a deep, biting cold that cut through every layer I had on. I opened the door expecting warmth, cinnamon candles, the low hum of the heater, maybe my mom calling out for me to take off my boots. Instead, my breath fogged instantly. I frowned. Mom? Dad? Nothing answered, not even an echo. I set my duffel down and walked further inside. The living room was dark, lit only by a faint streetlight filtering through the window. No Christmas tree, no decorations, no music, nothing. It felt abandoned. Then I saw it. A single sheet of lined paper, torn from a legal pad, placed neatly on the counter like it was some kind of sick joke. We went on a cruise. You take care of Grandpa. I read it once, then again, then a third time because my mind refused to accept what it said. A cruise? At Christmas? Leaving Grandpa alone? I heard a faint sound then, a low groan. My training kicked in instantly. Marines don't hesitate. We move. Grandpa? I called, already heading down the hallway. The air grew colder with every step. When I pushed open the guest room door, the darkness felt heavy, wrong. I flipped the switch. The light flickered before settling, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Grandpa was lying on the bed in his cardigan and flannel pants, no blankets pulled over him, no heater running. His hands were shaking uncontrollably, his skin pale and waxy, his lips tinted blue. Grandpa, I rushed to him, cradling his face. His skin felt like ice. Memories hit me all at once. Fishing trips at the old pond, him standing proud at my boot camp graduation, letters he sent during my first deployment. This man who never forgot a birthday had been left here like he didn't matter. I shrugged off my Marine winter coat, the heavy one meant for freezing field nights, and wrapped it around him. His body trembled, then slowly eased into the warmth. "Stay with me," I said, my voice unsteady. "I'm getting help." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. While waiting, I held his hand and kept talking, steady and controlled, the way we're trained to speak to wounded Marines. When the ambulance arrived, flashing red lights cutting through the snow outside, 2 EMTs rushed in. One of them took a look at Grandpa and muttered, "Jesus, how long was he like this?" They lifted him carefully onto a stretcher, wrapping him in thick thermal blankets. I climbed into the ambulance before anyone could stop me. I wasn't leaving him. At the hospital, under bright fluorescent lights and the quiet rhythm of machines, they worked on him. Warm IV fluids, oxygen, heated blankets. A nurse spoke gently. "He's lucky someone found him. Another few hours." She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. I sat beside him, gripping the chair so tightly my knuckles turned white. Anger burned under my skin. Not discipline, not control, just raw anger. My parents had left him, packed their bags, turned off the heat, and went on a Christmas cruise like none of this mattered. A social worker approached carefully. "Do you know how long he was alone?" she asked. I shook my head. "I just got here. I wasn't told anything." She pressed her lips together. "This borders on elder abandonment. It's serious." I nodded, but my thoughts were already moving ahead. Marines are trained to handle threats, to protect people who can't protect themselves. This wasn't a battlefield, but it felt like one. Hours later, Grandpa's breathing steadied. The doctor said he was lucky, stronger than expected. I moved my chair closer and rested my arm lightly against his. That's when he stirred. His eyes opened just slightly. His breath came slow and weak. I leaned in close, afraid to miss anything. What he said wasn't fear, it wasn't confusion, it wasn't pain. It was something else entirely. They don't know about. Help me get revenge. My breath caught. My grandfather, the kindest man I knew, asking for revenge. I'm here, I whispered. I'm not going anywhere. But inside, I already understood something he didn't. This wasn't going to be loud or reckless. It was going to be quiet, legal, calculated, the kind of response only someone trained to think ahead could carry out. I didn't sleep that night. The hospital lights never dimmed, and the steady beeping of the monitor kept me grounded in that strange space between anger and focus. Marines are used to staying awake, deserts, storms, barracks full of noise, but nothing compares to the silence of a hospital room where someone you love is barely holding on. I sat there, elbows on my knees, watching his face. His cheeks were hollow, his hands twitched now and then, but he was alive. Around 6 a.m., a nurse came in to check his vitals. She gave me a soft smile. "You're his granddaughter." "Yes, ma'am." "He's lucky you found him. Hypothermia in older adults sets in quickly. A few more hours—" Again, she didn't finish. I nodded, swallowing the tightness in my throat. After she left, I took his hand again. "I'm here. I won't leave you alone again." His eyelids flickered. That was enough. Later that morning, a social worker came in, calm and composed. "We need to talk about the situation," she said, taking a seat. I sighed. I figured. She folded her hands. "You found him in an unheated room, alone?" "Yes." "And your parents?" I hesitated, then answered. "They left, went on a cruise." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Without arranging care, food, heat?" "They left a note." Frustration rose again, like it was nothing. She exhaled slowly. "This is elder neglect, possibly abandonment. In some places, that's a felony." The word felony made everything go still inside me. This wasn't about anger anymore. This was about justice. Later that afternoon, Grandpa woke up properly for the first time. His voice was weak, but his eyes were sharp. "Kiddo," he said. I leaned closer. "I'm here." He looked around, then gave a faint chuckle. "Your parents must be enjoying that cruise." My jaw tightened. "Why didn't you call me?" He made a small motion. "Phone line was cut. Too expensive, your father said." I clenched my teeth. "They left you without heat." His expression softened. "They don't want an old man around." "That doesn't justify this." He squeezed my hand weakly. "No, it doesn't." Then, after a pause, he lowered his voice. "They think they know everything, but they don't know about—" He glanced around carefully. "The documents." I blinked. "Documents?" He nodded faintly. "Your grandmother left things, letters, wills, deeds. I hid them. They think they have everything. They don't." A faint breath escaped him, almost a laugh. "I may be old, but I'm not foolish." I leaned in. "What kind of documents?" "The kind that decide ownership, the kind that show what they've taken. They've been draining my money, using my pension, but I kept proof." My heart pounded. This wasn't just neglect, this was exploitation. "How much?" I asked. He closed his eyes. "More than I want to admit." Then he looked at me again. "You're a Marine. You know how to fight the right way. Help me finish this." I squeezed his hand. "Where are they?" A small, determined smile appeared. "In the house, hidden where your father would never look. I'll tell you when I'm stronger." "Okay," I said quietly. "We'll fix this." He nodded slightly. "Revenge doesn't have to be cruel. Sometimes it's just the truth catching up." That night, after he fell asleep, I stepped into the hallway. The hospital was quiet, filled with distant voices and machine sounds. I leaned against the wall, letting everything settle. My parents had left him to die. He had proof, and now he trusted me to make it right.
I didn't know exactly what I'd find, but I knew this: when they came back from their cruise, everything would be different. The next morning, I drove back to the house alone. Leaving him there wasn't easy, but the nurse had reassured me. He's stable. Go handle what you need to. The social worker had been direct. If there are documents, secure them. So I went. The street looked the same. The house looked the same. White siding, crooked mailbox, Grandma's wind chimes still hanging. From the outside, it looked normal. That was the worst part. Inside, it was still cold, though not as deadly as before. I turned the heat on and stood there for a moment. Then I remembered Grandpa's words: "Start where your grandmother prayed." The den. That small room had always been hers. My father barely entered it. To him, it was nothing. To her, it was sacred. The room still smelled like paper and polish. Her chair sat by the window. The bookshelf lined the wall. I went straight to her Bible, the worn brown one. Flipping through it, I found an envelope, my name written in her handwriting. I opened it. She wrote about my parents, about their habits, about her concerns. She mentioned documents, instructions, a lawyer. A card was tucked inside. I slipped everything into my uniform pocket. Then I searched. In a drawer, inside an old cigar tin, I found papers, the deed, bank statements, a will, everything. My grandfather's name on the house, transfers into my father's account, proof. I gathered it all, secured it, and took it with me. In my car, I called the number on the card, and law office answered. They told me to come in. At the office, I met the attorney who had worked with my grandparents. I told him everything. He reviewed the documents carefully. "This is serious," he said. "There could be consequences." I nodded. "I don't want drama. I want justice." He studied me. "Then you're doing it the right way."
When I left, the air felt sharp and clear. My parents were out there somewhere, enjoying themselves, thinking they had gotten away with everything. They had no idea what was waiting. The next afternoon, I returned to the house. It felt different now, warmer, cleaner. I left the note on the counter. I wanted them to see it again, to remember. I didn't decorate. I didn't pretend. I turned on the heat for one reason only, so no one would ever suffer like that in this house again. I made tea and waited. Marines are trained to wait, but waiting for your own parents to walk into the truth they created, that was something else entirely. As evening settled in, headlights swept across the living room wall. Car doors slammed. Voices, too cheerful, too loud, drifted in. "And that buffet last night? I swear I'm still full. You're the one who wanted dessert." Laughter, the sound of rolling luggage. The front door opened and warm cruise ship air rushed in with them. Salt, sunscreen, overindulgence, and something else, the blissful ignorance of people who believe life has rewarded them for nothing and will continue to do so. My mother came in first, wearing a bright floral cruise ship shirt she had no business wearing in December. My father followed, tan and smirking, flicking on the entryway light. "Oh," he said, blinking at me. "You're here already." I stood slowly from the dining chair where I'd been waiting. "I've been here since yesterday." My mother's smile faltered. "Yesterday? Why, we said you could take care of your grandfather when you got in." "When I got in," I repeated softly. He was freezing to death. They froze, not because of guilt, because of inconvenience. My father rolled his suitcase past me, annoyed. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Lily, don't be dramatic. He was fine when we left." "No," I said, stepping forward. "He wasn't." My mother waved a hand. "Your father checked on him before we left, didn't he?" My father shrugged. "He was in bed, looked comfortable enough." "Comfortable?" My voice cracked, not with emotion, but with disbelief. The thermostat was set to 50. He had no heat, no food nearby. You didn't call me. You didn't call anyone. My father sighed with exaggerated patience, like I was a child interrupting adult conversation. "Lily, this is exactly why we didn't call you. You blow everything out of proportion. Always have." My jaw tightened. He was nearly dead. My mother flinched but stayed silent. And I continued.
You left a note on the counter. We went on a cruise. You take care of Grandpa like he's a plant someone waters occasionally." My father walked into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of sparkling water and twisted it open. "Well, you're the Marine. You know survival. You could handle it. Besides, he's an old man. These things happen." I took a step forward. "No, accidents happen. Abandonment is a choice." He rolled his eyes. "Are we doing this right now? We just got home." "Yes," I said, "right now." My mother shifted uncomfortably. "Where is he? In the hospital?" She blinked. "Hospital? Really?" I didn't let her continue. "He had hypothermia, dehydration, malnutrition. The social worker said it was elder neglect." My father let out a small laugh. Social workers throw that phrase around every time someone forgets a heating bill. "Forgets," I said. "You turned it off." Silence. Just for a second, but it was a silence filled with truth. My mother pulled out a chair and sank into it. "Lily, honey, we didn't want to bother you. You're always busy with those deployments, always acting like everything is your responsibility." "Because it is," I snapped. "Because someone has to care about him." My father bristled. "Don't take that tone with me. I'm the one who's been burdened with him for years." "Burdened?" I echoed. "You mean supported by him?" His eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" I stepped to the counter, picked up the manila folder I'd prepared and placed it gently in front of them. "What's this?" my mother whispered. "Proof," I said. My father opened the folder. The deed, the bank statements, the will, every page. His tan face turned a shade paler. Where did you get these?" "Where he hid them," I said. "Where Grandma told me to look if things ever felt wrong." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, God." My father snapped the folder shut. "These don't prove anything. They prove everything," I said. "You've been pulling money out of his account for years. You've been using his Social Security checks. You've been telling people you're paying for his care when he's the one funding your lifestyle." He stood abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. "You listen to me." "No," I said, in a tone I'd used on Marines twice his size. "You listen." He froze. "You didn't just neglect him, you exploited him. You left him in a freezing house because you wanted a vacation." My mother began to cry. Not the guilty kind, the scared kind. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. Before I could answer, headlights swept across the window again. A car door shut. Slow footsteps approached. The front door opened, and there he was, Grandpa, alive, wrapped in blankets, supported by a nurse from the hospital's home care program. He looked smaller than usual, but he was standing. My father gasped. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Grandpa's voice was quiet, but each word was sharp as a blade. "Coming home before you sell it out from under me." My father recoiled as if struck. "We would never." "You would," Grandpa said. "You did." My mother sobbed softly. "It wasn't like that." Grandpa lifted his chin. "It was exactly like that." I stepped beside him, steadying him by the elbow, and for the first time in my life, my parents looked at me, not with annoyance, not with dismissal, but with fear. Not fear of me as a Marine, fear of the truth I carried, fear of what would happen next. My father didn't sit back down. He hovered near the kitchen counter like a cornered animal, one hand gripping the edge so tightly his knuckles widened. My mother stayed at the table, hands trembling around a tissue she kept folding and unfolding, as if the right crease might save her. Grandpa moved slowly to the armchair in the living room, his favorite chair, the one he'd sat in for a decade of Sunday football games. With the nurse's help, he lowered himself gently into it, exhaling once as if taking back the space my parents had tried to push him out of. He looked at me. "Bring it all here." I carried the manila folder across the room and set it on his lap. His fingers trembled as he opened it, not from weakness now, but from purpose. He took out the deed first, smoothing it flat on his knee like a flag before a ceremony. My father stared at it from across the room. "Dad, that's ancient paperwork. You didn't mean for that to remain current. We talked about transferring ownership, you remember?" "No," Grandpa said firmly, without even looking up. "You talked. I didn't agree." My father's face flushed. "Well, you practically agreed." "In what world," Grandpa replied, lifting his eyes, "does nodding politely count as signing over a house?" My mother drew a shaky breath. We thought you wanted us to have it someday." "Someday is not today," Grandpa said, "and wanting and taking aren't the same thing." My father took a step forward. "We've taken care of you." Grandpa's voice hardened. "You left me in a freezing house to die." My father shut his eyes, jaw clenching. The nurse stood quietly near the doorway, as unobtrusive as a shadow, but her presence added gravity to every word spoken. She was a witness, a professional one, someone who'd seen far too many families fall apart in hospital rooms. Grandpa slid the deed aside and lifted the bank statements. "Explain these." My father sighed loudly. "Dad, we've been over this. We had to move money around sometimes to cover bills, and you said—" "I said you could help manage the account," Grandpa interrupted, "not empty it." My mother looked at me with watery eyes. "Lily, you don't understand how hard it's been. Your father has been stretched thin." I didn't let my face soften. "Then why were you on a cruise?" She flinched. "It was a gift. For yourselves," I said, "not for him." My father let out a scoff. "Oh, come on, everyone needs a break. We've been carrying the weight of his care for years. Do you have any idea what it's like dealing with a stubborn old man every day?" Grandpa's eyebrows raised. "A stubborn old man who paid every one of your mortgage payments for 3 years." My father's mouth snapped shut. "Yes," Grandpa continued, voice quivering with both age and fury. "I know exactly how much you've depended on me. I have receipts, bank records, letters. You didn't just neglect me, you used me."
My mother's tears flowed harder. We were overwhelmed. I stepped closer. "Then you asked for help. You don't abandon someone." My father slammed his palm against the counter. "We didn't abandon him." Grandpa, without raising his voice, said the words that cut sharper than any shout. "You left me in the cold and hoped the problem would solve itself." Silence. Thick, heavy, suffocating. My father seemed to deflate. He finally pulled out a chair and sat, rubbing his temples, like the light had suddenly become too bright. Grandpa breathed deeply, then turned to me. "Show them the rest." I knew what he meant. I pulled out the photocopy of the will and placed it on the kitchen table between my parents. My father picked it up with shaky hands. As he read, the color drained from his face until he looked like the cold had followed him home. This isn't what we discussed," he whispered. "It's what your mother and I decided," Grandpa said, "years ago." My mother leaned over his shoulder, eyes scanning the lines. The words were crystal clear. The house was never intended for them outright. A portion of Grandpa's savings was willed to me. The protections in place ensured Grandpa couldn't be coerced. It was all documented, notarized, and legal. My mother swallowed hard. "So we get nothing?" Grandpa's expression softened, not with forgiveness, but with sorrow. "You were never supposed to get nothing. You were supposed to get something, shared, equitable, but you wanted everything." My father's breathing grew shallow. "Dad, if you go through with this, if you talk to lawyers or social workers, we could be charged. We could lose everything." Grandpa looked him dead in the eye. "You should have thought of that before you left me." My father covered his face with both hands. For the first time in my life, I saw him not angry or annoyed, but terrified. Grandpa lifted his chin. "I'm not out to ruin your lives, but I won't protect you from the consequences either." He looked to me. "Tell them." I nodded, then spoke clearly. The social worker documented everything. Legally, Grandpa has the right to press charges, but we're not making decisions today. There will be a mediation session, a lawyer, possibly law enforcement involvement. My mother sobbed into her hands. "Please, please, can we talk about this as a family?" Grandpa shook his head. "We will, but not on your terms." My father looked up, eyes red. "What do you want from us?" And finally the answer came, from Grandpa, not from me. "I want honesty," he said. "Responsibility and acknowledgement of what you did, not excuses, not tears, truth."
He placed his palm flat on the will, and I want my wishes respected, without lies, without manipulation. My father stared at the table, silent. My mother whispered, We didn't mean to hurt you." Grandpa's voice softened, but only a degree. Intentions don't warm a house. Another silence fell, this one different, the kind where words hang in the air, demanding to be confronted. Then Grandpa looked at me again. "Honey, help me stand." I moved to his side, lifting him gently. He faced my parents with a resolve I hadn't seen in years. "This house," he said, "stays under my name until I die, and after that, Lily will decide what to do with it. She's the only one who has acted like family." My parents' faces crumpled. "And as for the money," Grandpa continued, "we will untangle every penny together with a lawyer present." My father let out a low groan, like the weight of his choices had finally landed. Grandpa rested his hand on my arm. "And none of this is revenge," he said quietly. "This is accountability." He looked at my parents one last time. "When you abandoned me, you counted on silence. Well, silence is over." Then he turned toward the hallway, and I guided him back to his room, each step a victory he'd earned. Behind us, my parents sat in the dim kitchen, staring at the documents spread across the table like the pieces of a life they'd gambled and lost. The next morning, I drove Grandpa to the social worker's office for the first formal meeting.
He insisted on sitting in the front seat, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to. "I'm not cargo," he muttered. "I'm a witness." His voice was steady, but I could hear the strain underneath. Cold air still bothered him. His hands shook when he buckled the seatbelt. Still, he was determined. That was enough to steady me. The social worker, Miss Henderson, welcomed us with a warm smile, the kind older professionals have mastered after years of navigating broken family systems. She had gray-streaked hair, soft eyes, and a calm tone that could probably settle a hurricane. "Mr. Paris," she said, shaking his hand carefully, "I'm glad to see you up and about." Grandpa nodded. "I'm stubborn." "I can see that," she said with a small smile. "Let's talk about next steps." We followed her into a small conference room with beige walls and a fake fern in the corner. It didn't look like the kind of place where heavy truths were sorted out, but I suppose most justice doesn't happen in dramatic places. It happens in quiet, plain rooms where people finally run out of ways to lie to themselves. "Your parents will join us shortly," Miss Henderson said, settling into her chair. "Before they arrive, I want to clarify your goals." Grandpa inhaled deeply. "I don't want revenge, not in the way people picture it. I don't want them in jail unless they choose that path themselves." Miss Henderson nodded. "And what do you want?" "To be safe," he said simply. "To know my money is mine. To know I won't be left to freeze again." My chest tightened. The simplicity of it, that's what broke me. Miss Henderson turned to me. "And you? What do you want, Lily?" My answer came without hesitation. Accountability and the chance for him to heal without fear. She made a note, her pen scratching lightly. A knock on the door. My parents entered. My mother looked small, wearing a coat that was too big and a scarf she'd tied 3 times around her neck, as if fabric could protect her from the consequences waiting inside the room. My father, on the other hand, wore his old confident expression, a half smile, a lifted chin, but his eyes betrayed him. They darted between me and Grandpa, unsure where to land. "Good morning," Miss Henderson said professionally. "Please sit." My father ignored her tone and focused on Grandpa. "Dad, are you sure you want to do this? We could have talked at home." "No," Grandpa said firmly. "We couldn't." That shut my father up. Miss Henderson began carefully. "This is not a criminal proceeding. This is a mediation. The goal is to establish safety, clarify responsibilities, and determine whether further action is needed." My father exhaled. "Well, that's a relief." "But," she added, "if at any point we determined that elder abuse may have occurred, mandatory reporting laws apply." My father's shoulders slumped.
My mother's breath caught. "Let's begin," Miss Henderson said. The first topic was the heat. My mother tried to explain it away. "The furnace? It's old. Sometimes it clicks off." "No," I said softly. "It was turned off manually." My father rubbed his forehead. "We thought he was fine. He said he was warm." Grandpa blinked at him slowly. "It was 40 degrees in my room." My father muttered something unintelligible. Next came the finances. Miss Henderson slid the bank statements across the table. "These show recurring transfers from Mr. Harris's account to yours." My father shifted in his seat. "Those were reimbursements. We bought groceries, paid bills." "Then where are the receipts?" she asked. He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked to my mother. "We didn't keep them." Grandpa's voice cut through the air. "You kept the money." My mother burst into tears. "We didn't mean to steal. We were drowning. Bills, debts." Miss Henderson nodded gently. "Being overwhelmed is understandable, but using someone else's funds without transparency is exploitation." My father slammed his hands on the table. "We're not criminals." "No," Miss Henderson said calmly. "You are caregivers who made harmful choices. That doesn't make you monsters, but it does require accountability." My father stared at her, stunned. He'd expected an enemy. Instead, he found someone who wouldn't let him off the hook, but wouldn't destroy him either.
It disarmed him more than anger ever could. Miss Henderson explained the plan. A repayment schedule for the stolen funds, mandatory elder care classes, supervised budgeting oversight for the household finances, regular welfare checks by a case manager, and, most importantly, Grandpa's legal right to choose where he lived and who handled his money. At that last point, my mother whispered, "So we lose everything." "No," Grandpa said gently, "you lose control. There's a difference." The words landed with quiet finality. My father slumped back in his chair, defeated. "Dad, we didn't want to hurt you." Grandpa leaned forward, then, "Learn from this." There it was, not revenge, not triumph, a lesson offered like a rope thrown to someone who fell. After an hour of discussion, paperwork, agreements, and signatures, my parents stepped into the hallway to compose themselves. That left me and Grandpa alone with Ms. Henderson. "You handled that well," she told him. He shrugged. "I'm old. I don't have time to yell." We chuckled softly. Then she turned to me. "He's safer now. With the protections in place, your parents can't repeat what happened." Grandpa reached for my hand. "You did this," he whispered. "Your grandmother was right." Emotion rose in my throat like warm water into cold hands. "I just did what anyone should." "No," he said firmly, "not anyone, you." We left the building slowly, Grandpa leaning on my arm. The winter air was crisp, but not painfully cold, a small mercy. As we approached my car, he stopped, looked up at the sky, and murmured, "This isn't the end of us as a family. It's the beginning of us learning how to be one." I squeezed his hand. "You still believe that?" He nodded. "Revenge ends things. Accountability rebuilds them." I helped him into the car, buckled him in gently, and shut the door. When I walked around to the driver's side, I realized something had shifted inside me. Not anger, not relief, but something steadier. Justice, the kind that heals instead of burns. When I slid into the driver's seat, Grandpa smiled faintly. When they returned, he said, echoing his earlier words, they thought they'd find their house waiting. Instead, they found the truth. And the truth, I said, turning the key in the ignition, doesn't freeze. 3 months later, winter melted into early spring. The snowbanks shrank into gray slush, the bare branches started budding again, and the world felt a little softer around the edges. Grandpa had bounced back more than any doctor expected. He was still thin, still slow on the stairs, but sharper than ever. He liked to tell people he was running on borrowed time and winning. During those months, everything changed. My parents attended every elder care class. They met the budgeting supervisor weekly. They repaid the first chunk of the money, more than I expected, honestly. And for the first time in my life, they looked humbled.
Not broken, not defeated, just human in a way they'd never been. They weren't suddenly saints. They still argued about silly things. My father still sighed dramatically whenever paperwork was put in front of him. My mother still cried too easily. But the entitlement, the cold certainty that they deserved everything and owed nothing, had cracked. And sometimes that's all a family needs for light to get in. One Saturday afternoon, I drove Grandpa to a small diner outside town, the kind with cracked vinyl booths, servers who call you sweetheart, and pies displayed under glass domes like they were crown jewels. We went there a lot. Familiar food, friendly faces, no judgment. A good place for healing. As we ate our pancakes, Grandpa sipped his coffee and said, "Your parents asked me something." I looked up. "What's that?" "They asked if we could have a Sunday dinner, all of us, like the old days." I set down my fork. "Are you comfortable with that?" He gave a little shrug. "Comfortable enough. I won't forget what they did, but I don't want my last years spent holding on to anger. Anger takes time. I'd rather spend that time eating mashed potatoes." I smiled. "That sounds like you." He tapped the table with 2 fingers. "And maybe it's time they see you not as their daughter to dismiss, but as the woman who saved their father's life." I looked out the window. Snowmelt dripped from the roof in slow, even drops. "I'm not looking for recognition." "I know," he said. "That's why you deserve it."
Sunday came. I brought rolls and a homemade casserole, an attempt from a Marine who cooked about as often as she wore lace. My parents were already in the kitchen when we arrived. My mother stirring gravy, my father carving a roast. It was almost unsettlingly normal. My father glanced at Grandpa. "Dad, you look good." Grandpa grinned. "Better than the furnace you tried to freeze me with." My father winced, but nodded. I deserved that. My mother stepped forward, wringing her hands. "Lily, honey, thank you for being patient with us." "I wasn't patient," I said gently. "I was honest." She gave a trembling smile. "Then thank you for being honest." We ate together in the dining room, not a grand reconciliation, not a tearful movie ending scene, just a quiet, careful meal where no one pretended the past hadn't happened. That kind of honesty was new for us. Halfway through dinner, my father cleared his throat. "Lily, I want to say something." I braced myself. "You were right," he said, staring at his plate. "About the money, about the house, about Dad. We got selfish and lazy. And when your mother suggested the cruise, I shouldn't have agreed." My mother touched his arm. "We weren't thinking clearly." "No," Grandpa said, setting down his fork. "But now you are, and that's what matters." My father looked at him with tired eyes. "Dad, I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't eloquent, but it was real." Grandpa reached across the table and patted his hand. "Thank you." I watched them, a slow warmth growing in my chest. Not pride, not vindication, just relief, because justice isn't only about punishment. It's about movement, a shift, a chance for better days. After dinner, I helped Grandpa into his coat so we could head home. My parents stood in the doorway watching us. "Lily," my mother said softly. "Yes?" "If you ever need anything, or if you think we're slipping again, tell us. Don't let us become that type of people again." I nodded. "I'll speak up." My father gave a small, awkward salute, something he used to do as a joke when I first joined the Marines, back when life felt simpler. "You're the strong one in the family now," he said. I didn't correct him because maybe strength isn't about rank or uniform or battles fought overseas. Maybe it's about knowing when to hold a grudge and when to let one go. Later that night, after Grandpa was settled in bed, I sat on the couch with a blanket and a cup of tea. The house was warm, quiet, and safe. Not perfect, nothing in life ever is, but it was safe. Grandpa called from the bedroom. "Lily?" "Yes, Grandpa?" He hesitated. "When they returned, I thought the only thing left for me was revenge, but you showed me something better." "What's that?" "Hope." I sat there a moment, letting that word settle into the room the way heat slowly fills a house after a long freeze. Hope. Because even the coldest homes can warm again, even the hardest hearts can soften, And even families who hurt each other can learn to mend what they broke if someone is brave enough to speak up, steady enough to stand firm, and kind enough to offer a second chance. "You did all of this," Grandpa said softly. "No," I whispered. "We did." As the house settled for the night, I thought about the people who might hear this story, people who've carried wounds from their own families, people who've been neglected or overlooked, people who've wondered if speaking up is worth the pain. To them, to you, I would say, don't stay silent, don't let injustice linger, and don't ever believe you're powerless. Sometimes the greatest act of love is holding someone accountable, and sometimes the greatest act of strength is choosing to forgive them afterward. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of someone you love, or if you simply believe more people should hear stories about justice, healing, and the courage to do what's right, I invite you to share it, leave a comment, or subscribe for more. From my home to yours, may you always have warmth, truth, and family who fight for you, not against you.